Hi, folks. It is good to see everyone. Welcome to the webinar on work and meaning. Thank you for joining me today. It is good to see you here. It is good to be together to talk about a subject that is pretty important, and it's one that I spent a lot of time wrestling about. And so it's good to take some time. Thank you for joining me to reflect on work, on our jobs, on the nature of work. This is a really important subject. I think most of us, it's really easy to not spend a lot of time thinking about. It's hard to actually take time to step away, to be intentional, to be reflective, and to think about work and about the nature of work. This is something that means a lot to me. It's something I think about a lot. It's something I'm in discussion with and reading books on quite a bit because I'm fortunate, for those of you who don't know, I founded a technology services company called Mainstay Technologies, and that's the company that I get to be CEO of today. And so I have a fair bit of control over my own job and career by that nature. And then I get to shape the careers and the jobs of a lot of other people that are connected to that. And so it's important to me to think about what is good, healthy work? What does good, healthy work look like? What does it feel like? What are the things that we believe about work and the things that we should be pursuing in our careers? And how does all of this connect to meaning? We're all part of this broader system, the culture, our jobs, our companies, the places that we work and that we live shape our thinking about work, our thinking about jobs, our thinking about why we work, about what we should get out of it. And since this is a time for us to pause, put some other things on hold and reflect for a moment on work, on the nature of work, and on why we work. And so I would encourage you to open a Word document or OneNote page, or take a pen and paper if you are stuck in Stone Ages. No, pen and paper has its place. But if you would take that, and there's a few exercises that I find helpful to jot down to help us to think reflectively about work and about what we're doing. And the first one is, I'm really interested in what comes to your mind when you think about work, when you think about why you work. Why do you work? And take a moment and just jot down some of the things, if you would, that come to mind when you say, why do you work? What is it about work that's compelling? Why do you do it? And what do you think of? What comes to mind when you think of the word work? And if you're like most of us, you maybe write down things like, because I have to, because I need to make money, because I work because it's just work. I don't think about it. But there's also deeper things. Think for a moment about why we work: for identity. We work to feel good about ourselves. We work to help others, but we also work to try to achieve some sense of belonging in the world. We work to accomplish something, to get good affirmation from people. And there's a lot of reasons beneath the work. Like, it's not just about our jobs. It's not just about paychecks. We know that. You know that, or you wouldn't be here discussing and thinking about something like this. We work for a lot of different reasons. And spending a moment to think about those reasons and what they should be, what they could be, that's time well spent. So thank you for being here. Now, why does all of this matter? Well, let's just take a moment to talk about what is work. The easiest way to think about this is, imagine for a moment that everybody on earth stopped working. Today, everyone stopped working, went home, and they were done. Think of how quickly our world would fall apart and chaos would take over. We would immediately, power plants would start to stop. Farmers, food would start to rot in the fields. Grocery stores would go unstocked. Cars would be unrepaired. Our house, like everything around us. If you stopped working, the woods would start to take over your lawn very, very, very surprisingly quickly. If you mow your lawn or do any yard work, you know exactly what I mean. Work is this way that we bring order to chaos, that we organize the world around us. We apply our intelligence, our own purpose to life around us. We work. If our ancestors hadn't worked, we'd all be stuck in caves still. The only reason that we have everything that we have is because people work, because they have ideas and they apply their intelligence to the world around them, and we bring order out of that chaos. It's a powerful, powerful thing. And so what we believe about that work really matters. Do we think it's a necessary evil, something to escape, something meaningless, something that's drudgery or a rat race? Do you realize that we spend on average 100,000 hours of our lives working? 100,000 hours in some kind of a job. It's not even counting yard work and volunteer work and other things that we're doing. But over the course of our life, It is the biggest share of our waking hours. We spend more time and energy in work than in any other part of life, except for sleep. So our waking hours are spent in work. Now you might say, oh, well, I spend my evenings and my weekends with family. It's like, well, actually, if you start to divide up your time, you realize it's not true. We spend time making meals, we spend time driving, we spend time going to the grocery store, we spend time doing yard work, we spend time watching Netflix and movies. And then yes, we spend time relating with our friends and our families, but it's actually a much smaller segment than we typically realize. And it is dwarfed by the enormity of work. What that means is that at the end of our lives, we'll realize that work is one of the primary things we gave our life to. It's one of the primary ways that we impacted others and that we were impacted by it. People, when we work, we're actually changed and shaped through the work and the people that are around us. And so this is a really big thing. And what do you seek out of work? What do we do with all this work? What's the right reward, the right way of thinking about this biggest thing that you and I give our lives to? Is that just because we're trapped and suffering and it's a necessary evil? And if we were just richer and smarter, we wouldn't have to do this? Or is work somehow something intrinsic and important in human life and something that we should pursue in a healthy and a whole way as possible? You know, obviously we work for money. I look forward to questions at the end and objections and discussions in this, because it's easy to think, well, sure, we can think about the purpose of work, but I got bills I got to pay. I got kids I got to feed, diapers to buy. Yes, of course. But that is just the bare minimum of why we work. We work to create value and get paid for it. But actually, our hearts long for something more. There is more. Money is good, but it's more than that. It's like that's the first good. And there's much more goodness beyond that as we think about it and as we see it, I'm convinced. Work contains this thread. It's something that can lead us to a life of fullness and a life worth living and a life of impact, or it can lead us to emptiness and selfishness and a lack of all of those things. And so our belief about work ultimately changes the reasons we work, which changes the career decisions that we make. It changes our lives. It changes the lives of others, for good or for ill. Now, I have to stop because everybody who gives a speech, I think there's a contractual requirement, if you're going to give a talk, that you have to quote Steve Jobs at some point. It's a fun game to actually play, especially if there's somebody who's in the tech space, to say, can somebody make it through a speech without referencing Apple or Steve Jobs? It's very rarely done. And so I feel like it's almost a contractual obligation that I have to bring in Steve Jobs. So I'll get it out of the way here at the beginning and just say, imagine for a moment that Steve Jobs quit as soon as he could have retirement, which was very, very early in his career. And he just went and sailed and boated around the world and didn't do any of that, anything else. How would that have impacted the rest of us who've been inspired by Apple, who've seen the inspiration of their creativity, who carry iPhones in our pockets, who have had our lives blessed and impacted, move forward by having GPS in our pockets, and the many, many innovations that have come out of Apple? Steve Jobs impacted the world and changed and pursued something much bigger. Now, most of us go, well, I'm no Steve Jobs. I'm not Bono who can go and pursue some big, grand, change the world thing. What does this have to do with me? Like, my job isn't like that at all. And what I've come to realize through lots of wrestling and questioning in this is that pursuing meaning is actually the right thing for all of us to pursue in work. And it's actually inherent in all of our jobs and something true for all of us. Now, I didn't always believe that. In my own story, I came into business by accident. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I just knew I was good with computers and helped people. And I started just helping literally some elderly folks upload photos on their computers and get their computers cleaned of viruses, especially back then. Pop-ups and viruses was a real problem. And one thing led to another, and it started to become a company. And I started to realize, ooh, this is something bigger and I can get something out of this. And I started to get really motivated to build this company. And so much of that motivation was actually tied to a desire to become somebody through that. I realized that my work, I didn't want to just work. I wanted to make enough money and be significant enough that I could feel special, that I could feel significant. If I would believe the story from like Inc. magazine or Forbes magazine, where you see these young entrepreneurs on the cover of the magazine, and you see stories of people with these lavish lifestyles, or this like, oh, I sold this for $1 billion and went on to this. And I believed if I could be somebody like that, then I would be okay. I would have peace. I would actually have some order inside. And I really sought from my work. One of many reasons was that I built the company. I worked really, really hard saying, okay, I want to be able to be significant in this. I want to be special. I want to have my work actually solve some inner emotions that I have. And I had this belief, I had beliefs about work that were really limiting. I believed that if you really loved what you do, you never work a day in your life. You ever heard that phrase? If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I was taught that very young. And it haunted me because ultimately work was really hard. And there was a lot of days that were really stressful and really hard. And I believe, well, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, it shouldn't be hard. And so I must not be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I must need to go and find something else that I need. And then I would believe that if I really had good work and was significant and built the best company, then I would feel special. I would feel significant. I would feel like this really matters and like I matter. And so when I didn't feel like I mattered, it's like, oh, I'm not successful enough. I need to be more successful. And I believed if I had enough money, that I wouldn't feel anxiety. I would feel peace. I would feel all of these things. And over time, this started to sort of coalesce into a dream. And, we all live and work in a culture where we're influenced and what we see as good and healthy is informed by people around us. And being an entrepreneur, it's like, well, what's the ultimate of that? It's like, well, you build a business, you found the business, but then you sell the business and then you go and you invest in other businesses and you sit on boards and you advise people and maybe you start something else and sell that. And you sort of live above the grind of work with all this money and all this significance, and you escape the rat race of that. And that's really the dream that was impressed upon me through Inc. magazine and through some business leaders that I would talk to and through people around me, through my father's view of success that I really internalized as a kid of like, oh, if I'm showing up and work as hard and I'm grinding it out every day, like I'm not totally successful, and I'll feel successful when I get to those things. And those things coalesced into a specific dream of like, I will have everything I want if my work can get to this point, if I can escape all these things about work and really stop working to the fullest of that. I could choose easier work if I could do this. And I want you to take a moment, if you open that Word document or have that pen and paper, and just write down, what's my dream in work? What's the thing that you long for out of work? And if we're in a reflection space here, so the invitation is just take a step, take a breath, and say, okay, what is it? What's my dream? I'm curious, does anything come to mind? Does anything stir within you of like, oh, my dream is to do something where I enjoy it every day, or to get to retirement early and be done with all of this? Or what is that dream? We all have that, and that pulls us forward. And it's really worth looking at that dream and saying, is this a good, healthy dream? Is this a dream rooted in the truth? Is this a dream that's actually the fullest of what I can achieve and the highest good? Our vision, the thing that we hold in highest regard, lives within us and it compels us forward. It's the thing that we look at every day, whether we mean to or not, subconsciously, that we're pulling towards. And if you say, well, I don't have a dream, I don't even think about that. It's like, oh, that's so good to know. It's so good to be aware within yourself that, I don't know, I just work. I haven't really thought about these things. And just make a note to start to spend a little bit of time on this. This is life we're talking about. Remember that 100,000 hours? Like, this matters. We're spending enormous amounts of time and energy. The greatest single output of our lives is typically family and work. Those are the two biggest things by far that we give our lives to. And it is worth thinking, what's the dream? Why am I doing? What is this that I want out of it? Okay, so back to my dream. This dream haunted me. Every time I had a stressful day, I would feel like I was insignificant, and I thought about work as like, oh, if I could just get to the best work, I'd be okay. Well, I got the ultimate test a few years ago. We've got a wonderful team at Mainstay. Been fortunate to provide technology services to our clients to a degree. We have a lot of stability as a company, and other people noticed. Larger companies, private equity firms, they started calling. And I started routinely getting calls and emails, one, sometimes two, sometimes three times a week, from people saying, hey, we've heard about Mainstay. We see it. We'd love to talk to you about selling and your own strategy. And when do you want to exit your business? And the numbers they'd throw around were the kind of money where I wouldn't have to take a grind job. I would have freedom. I would actually be able to ascend to that thing that my dream was. And this was my test. This was it. But it didn't feel right. I tell you, I wrestled with this over a long period of time of what's right. I looked at a few things. I looked at the companies that were sold. And in the vast majority of cases, you may be on this call having had experience of companies that were sold and what happens, but there are certainly exceptions. But most of the time when a company is sold, it becomes significantly worse for the team that works there. It does a significantly worse job for its clients, quality degrades, and significantly pulls back from its integration and commitment to the community. And these are natural things. When somebody buys a business, they end up treating it like an asset, and they want to just maximize as much financial return as possible. And the thought of leaving all of this, my team, to that didn't sit right. And then I started looking around at other people who'd sold their businesses and what happened. And I realized I would probably be like them, which is tend towards really easy work, tend towards investing, and tend towards seeking my own pleasure and just thinking what I want to do. And looking at their lives, they weren't necessarily the highest and fullest life. Like the ones who really were like living a healthy life typically went to some other really hard work. Some of them started other companies. And I looked and I said, I love Mainstay. I don't want to start something else. We have a great, wonderful company and a wonderful team. But it was beyond that. What helped me was stepping back and saying, 30 years from now, is the world better or worse if I continue to lead Mainstay? And if I create a strategy that pushes ownership down internally instead of selling to somebody who matters about the financials? Is the world better or worse? And am I a better or a worse person? I might have an easier life, might have more free time, more leisure time, some good things, certainly like more time with family, and those things can be really good. But ultimately, embracing the grind and the challenge of work, I realized this is the way that I can make the world a better place, and I can actually become the better version of myself. And thinking 20, 30 years out, it became really clear. And it started to realize that work is about meaning. It's about something far more meaningful than just a paycheck, that hidden beneath the busyness, the engagement every day with our jobs and with our paychecks and with our coworkers, is that we are actually on this pursuit where work is the greatest outflow of our lives, and our lives are ultimately about pursuing something that is meaningful. Life itself is about saying, what is my purpose? And how do I live that purpose? How do I climb the mountain that matters in life, that says that I was here and it matters? I matter, my life mattered. And work is the primary, it's one of the biggest single tools that we have in this pursuit of meaning. And I said, no, I'm not going to sell it. I'm never going to sell. It doesn't mean, everybody exits their business one way or the other, right? Whether it's in a box or intentionally. So obviously there's succession planning and ownership planning, but not from a way that gives me this workless paradise where I'm significant and don't have to work. No, that's not right. And then when I look at our team and I look at all the jobs that we get to create and get to craft, it actually becomes about, how do we do work that's meaningful? How does work not become this necessary evil, but something that's meaningful? And this isn't just a luxury that we get to pursue at Mainstay. No, this is actually inherent in work itself. It's just most jobs and most business pressures away from that. Most things say, escape this rat race. Work is a necessary evil. You want to retire as soon as possible. Work is always going to be miserable. You're only going to be able to bring a fraction of yourself to work. So just do what you have to do and then bring your full self over here. We think wrongly. We have a cultural view of work that's missing the depth of meaning. Work and meaning are deeply interconnected. All right, so meaning is a big word. What do I mean by meaning? There are two things. And by the way, please don't hesitate with questions, and we'll get to some discussion at the end here. Meaning itself, there's really two ways to think about meaning, two definitions that I'll give it, an external and an internal. So externally, we're gonna go philosophical for a moment. Please, it's 1:20 on a Wednesday afternoon as we're talking about this, and this is a good time wherever you are to step back and say, all right, let's have a bit of a philosophical conversation for a moment. Do you believe that things outside of yourself matter, that love and goodness and beauty and truth are somehow real, that doing the right thing matters? Like, Mother Teresa is somebody that I think we all admire. Did her work of deep sacrifice, helping the dying, did that matter, or was she kind of foolish for that? And we respect it, but that's really sacrifice and those things are not for us. Or are somehow in life is truth and goodness and beauty, are they actually real? Like some folks believe that love is just an evolutionary mechanism that ensures that we have babies and take care of those babies. And you know what? That's part of it. There's no question. That's where it came from. Like there's a real, very real sense of like, those are the mechanics of it. But if you ever really love someone, you know that love is actually real, that love is more than just a chemical trick to get us to sacrifice ourselves to propagate the species, that there is some significance in this. You can think of a simple exercise of, if you knew that you could make a bunch of your dreams come true, let's just say you could get $3 million pushing a button, but somewhere in the world, somebody died, a small child died, or experienced great suffering because of the button that you pushed. Would you do it? And we think, oh my goodness, now think of her life, think of the value of a human life. Would you push a button that destroyed a human's life for $3 million? No, because of this external reality that we realize life is somehow valuable in and of itself, that goodness is worth sacrifice for. So here's the exercise. Just take a moment and jot down, what are some things that you would sacrifice for? What comes to mind immediately that you would sacrifice for? That you would say, I will endure some pain today for this. What comes to mind? So we write a couple things down. You know, what normally comes to mind is if you have children, kids, right up there. I mean, I give my life. I mean, I do give my life for my children. Integrity. Do we give our life? Will we sacrifice to actually do the right thing? Do something that's sort of harmful for us now, but actually aligns us with doing the right thing. Our community, our friends, our family, for others. If we don't have something that's worthy of sacrifice, we have empty lives. We have lives that are empty and meaningless. And that's the internal definition of meaning, is it's that thing that gives us significance, that gives us fulfillment. When we pursue meaning, when we pursue something that has value in and of itself, when we say, I'm actually in pursuit of doing good and sacrificing for the sake of others, the sacrificing for the sake of what is true, what is good, and what is beautiful, the way that we see great artists do. If you've ever read a biography on Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci or any of the great artists that have impacted our lives, we realize they often were miserable. They sacrificed greatly, but for the sake of beauty, they did it. Or you talk to a soldier who's willing to put his or her life on the line for the sake of their whole entire community, for their country, that connection of everyone around. Sacrifice is what gives us, the holding of something worthy of sacrifice gives us fulfillment. It gives us meaning. You know, Viktor Frankl wrote a wonderful book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in it, he makes this wonderful point that, and his quote is that happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. One must have a reason to be happy. And his argument, which has been proven through psychological research and studies, is that if we pursue happiness, my friends, we don't get it. If you pursue happiness, it doesn't work. Imagine people living on a cruise ship, and you will quickly realize why this doesn't work. You ever been on a cruise ship and you see people just, more food and more, it can be fun. It can be fun for a while, but it can also feed this selfish side. If you've ever worked in retail and customer service, you realize that when people start thinking just about what makes them happy, they end up getting pretty ugly, and they end up being and then they end up being mean to people around them and miserable feeling themselves. It's one of the sad things in this pandemic. Like public service workers are being treated more poorly. It's just really clear. You talk to anybody, an Uber driver, somebody at a restaurant, people are less patient. They're more selfish somehow. I mean, I have great grace for that. We are all under stress from the pandemic. It has been a burden for everyone. But still, that when we start thinking just about ourselves and our own desires, it not only hurts everyone around us, it actually doesn't work. When we pursue meaning, when we pursue something that gives us fulfillment, where we pursue something where we have this inner sense of a job well done, of fulfillment, of worthy sacrifice, then we can actually find happiness in that as well. All right, a couple of exercises. One is, imagine for a moment that you've retired. This is a really helpful, this is called what I call the cabin in the woods exercise, or the rocking chair test. Imagine that you're retired at the end of your life. You've lived a long, good life. You're full of years, and you are nearing the end of all of this story here on earth. And you are sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch of a cabin in the woods overlooking this beautiful view. The eagles circling, the wind is blowing, the sun is setting, and you are thinking about your life. You think back over, how did I spend my life? What did I give my life to? And you think about the people that you impacted. You think about where your time went. No one gets to that point and says, oh, I wish I just spent more time in the office to make more money, or I wish I'd bought more things for myself. I wish I'd just got, eaten more sweets and more desserts and just gotten drunk more often and partied and just did whatever I wanted more. Think about what you're going to value in that moment. What I know comes to mind for me is the people whose lives I've impacted. And the people around me that I say, oh, those are the ones, the sacrifices that I made for something true or good or beautiful, the things that I did that brought light and life into others' lives. Think about what your success definition is in that cabin in the woods at the end of your story. And that's the success that we can be pulling to. That's the success for work. This is a really helpful mental exercise, by the way. Anytime you have a big decision, you can put yourself in that cabin on that rocking chair and think, how would I feel having made that decision or not? If you're risking trying something that's been a dream for a long time, you want to go and finally get voice lessons and try this singing thing, or go for this promotion and study and go and work to qualify yourself for your dream job, but you're not sure it's worth it. Put yourself in that cabin in the woods, put yourself in that rocking chair, and you can think back and say, all right, thinking about the scope and arc of my life, am I glad I did it or not? Here's another way to think about meaning. Imagine for a moment that there's a new breakthrough drug, and this drug is the drug of complete euphoria. It is like the greatest high with zero side effects, and you can take it enough where you never come down. The only problem is that you lose all sense of motivation or willingness to sacrifice. So if you take this drug, Euphoria, you will just sit in the closet all the time, feeling the fullness of pleasure, feeling absolutely delighted in yourself, but you're going to drop out of life. Would you take that drug? Now, I'll say on a hard day, that sounds really good to me. On a hard day, oh man, that sounds like a really nice drug. Maybe we could vacation there for a little while. But I wouldn't take that. Life is hard, but life has meaning. If you wouldn't take that drug and drop out of life and just have pleasure all the time, then like me, you value meaning. All right. How do we get that in work? What does that look like? We all want this. Fascinatingly, there was a Better Up survey recently, and of the thousands of professionals they surveyed, 9 out of 10 would take a pay cut for more meaning in work. That just shows that this is something that we crave. Having meaning connected to our work, finding fulfillment in what we do, having a sense of purpose and direction. That's something that we all long for and we crave. 9 out of 10 would take a pay cut for more meaning. I mean, if that's not showing the business world, who is so often going in the other way, like what we really value, I don't know what is. Because unfortunately in the business world, so often it's going the other way. I mean, remember that exercise about would you push the button and bring suffering on a little child somewhere? Well, that's unfortunately what we do so often with our clothes, because the way business and trade agreements are set up, that they're sweatshops, and we are bringing suffering in through buying what we buy. And there is this awful thing in most business and like business overall that can lead away from it towards this very transactional, the person who makes the most money is the one who wins. And this race and this pull towards giving work far more hours than we should and believing the wrong things, and then thinking that this is the fullness of it, rather than saying, wait a second, life is like a hierarchy. And at the very top are things like truth and goodness and beauty, love, faith, and hope. These are the things that are at the very top. And then work is one of the next tier down, where it's this thing that I must do in order to be able to live. And it's also this thing I must do to pursue meaning and to chase these things and to do a life of meaning and to bring about goodness in the world. It's something that I get to do, but we have to see that if we sacrifice goodness and truth and beauty for the sake of work, it's not worth it. It's not worth it if suddenly in your company, you can create all kinds of suffering somewhere in the world to make more money. That's just not worth it. To take a job where we can make more money, but be less fulfilled, to not pursue the meaning of why we're here, it's not worth it. So how do we do this? How do we actually pursue this in work? Well, there's really 3 places that we know that we find meaning. All right, 3 things. One is through making the world a better place for others. You impact the world positively for others. There's great meaning. Just think for a moment about times you volunteered, things that you've done, mentoring, parenting, being a good brother, friend, sister, whatever it is, impacting the world positively. That is something that is deeply connected to meaning. The second is becoming the best, fullest version of yourself, the healthiest, most actualized, fullest version of who you are. And the third is doing that in a way that's connected to others, belonging, friends, family, relationship, being loved and loving. Those three things, making the world a better place, becoming the fullest, best version of yourself, and loving and being connected to others. Those three things. Well, let's just connect those three things to work. That is the essence of good career trajectory planning, is to pursue those three things in work. And actually work is really well suited for all three of those things, because as we work, we are shaping and changing the world and bringing order and actually doing good for others. The only reason any of us get paid is because we're doing something of value. So it's actually really good. And it is a way of impacting the world positively. Or it can be. Work also stretches us, stresses us, requires discipline. I mean, like, think about the ways that work has shaped you and changed you and who you were before you started your career. Work has a major impact and can draw us out of the fullness of ourselves. And then work connects us with a team. It connects us with people on a mission together, and we can have very deep and meaningful relationships through work. So that is the essence of pursuing it. Now, I hear the objection of, well, I have to pursue more money. Like, I don't have enough money to do things like buy a home, be stable, have some savings in the bank that are necessary for some level of financial security and stability. And I hear that, I get that. And I think that's very, very true. And I am by no means brushing aside that. I just believe that the actual path towards that financial security that we long for is through pursuing meaning, because we'll actually be better even at growing in our compensation by providing value, by seeking to help the world, help serve others, become the best version of ourselves, and be really loving and loved well. If we pursue that, we also can make a tremendous amount of money because we're creating value for so many people through that process. And it's about saying, there are times where we may need to sacrifice some longer term for short term in order to have a job that pays well enough, but that our long-term quest should be a job that connects us to the highest level of meaning that we can. We should be thinking about that the money needs to connect to something that we really enjoy and are well suited for, that is tied to our call and our unique giftings, and that's connected to our purpose and the meaning that we are pursuing. And having all three of those lined up, it's not just like, well, I have to get one done and then the next, and then the next. No, we have to think about them all together. And there are times where it's like, well, I'm stuck in this. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Well, let's work, but we want to get all three of those. We want to create a lot of value that can bring financial reward, doing things that we're well suited for, that we're uniquely qualified for. It's connected to our call and our giftings, that's connected to meaning, to making the world a better place, being the best and fullest version of ourselves, growing in that personal way, and being deeply connected to others. If we think rightly about all three of those, that actually can lead us towards our dream jobs. That can lead us towards the best and most fulfilling careers. And that's true for everyone, whether it's flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. It's like there is such an opportunity there to find meaning, while also recognizing that's probably not going to grow us into the fullest person that we can be over time. We can find meaning in any job that we have. And if we can't, if what we're doing is actually working in a job that makes things worse for the people and that shapes us to be a worse person, we can't get out of there fast enough. We need to be willing to make great sacrifices and risk great things to get out of it. Imagine that you're in sales and you know that the product that you're selling isn't actually needed by your customers and that they'd be better off spending money somewhere else. Well, every time you make a sale, the world is getting a little bit darker. Or if you're in sales and you're in this high pressure environment that makes you look at relationships transactionally, and you start seeing people as like, how do I pull the levers to get them to do what I want to do? That's not the person that you want to become. That's not the person that your future self sitting in the rocking chair in that cabin in the woods is going to be proud of. You want that person to be proud. You want the future self to be really proud of who you are. So if you work in something that you go, man, every day I'm furthering something that all it's doing is enriching these few people, and it's actually like harming the environment. It's hurting other people. It's making the world a little bit darker because of what I do, or it's just burning me out. It's shaping me into somebody who doesn't care anymore. I'm losing everything. Stop and ask why, and treat that as a really big deal, and lead towards a place of meaning. Okay, a practical tool for this. Practical way of how we can actually say, where are we? And what should we do? I don't have time to get into career planning and call. That could come in another session. But this is about surveying, where are we? And then what direction should we be taking? All right, so I've got 5 questions, and what I'd like you to do is rate them on a 0 to 5. 0, not at all. Don't have it at all. 5 is full, very strong, very vibrantly that you feel each of these 5 questions. And if you would just write down what your rating is on each of these 5 questions, and we'll total it up, and we can have a discussion about what that means in the totals. All right, first question. My work makes a significant positive impact for others. How strong do you believe that's true? 0, not at all. 5, very strongly. 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in the middle. My work makes a significant positive impact for others. That's the first one. If you are resolving IT issues, that can make a significant positive impact, but maybe what you do, it does make a significant positive impact. You're selling something great in marketing, but you realize it's not totally like the fullest of what I want, of the impact that I want. And that's okay, rate it a little bit less. It can be a positive impact, but you can say, yeah, but I really want so much more. Not just like I want to stay pursuing more. It's like I need more now, and then rate it a little bit less than 5. All right, secondly, I can regularly feel the positive impact of my work. Okay, so it's one thing to say objectively my work makes a positive impact, but how do you feel about it? How fulfilled are you? How much do you believe that the grind and the suffering of work? Because let me tell you, work has suffering and it is hard, and it is not easy for anyone. But so the greatest rewards from work is that recognition of the positive impact that we make. Just step back and think about it. How regularly do you feel the positive impact of your work? 0 to 5. All right, third one. I deeply value the connections I have with others in work. How true is that? 0 to 5. How deeply do you value the connections that you have with clients, with teammates, with your stakeholders, with others around you? How deep and meaningful are those relationships in your life? 0 to 5. All right, 4. Remember, there's 5 questions total here. I'm growing in skills and work is challenging me. All right, are you growing in like very specific skills, in knowledge, in things that help you to work better and to have the skills to make the world a better place in that? Just the skills and knowledge side. Are you growing and being challenged through your work? 5, you're very strongly, constantly being pulled towards new skills and being trained. 0, like not at all. I'm doing the same thing. I'm not growing in the least in that way. And lastly, I'm becoming a better person and work is calling me higher. How true is that? Are you becoming not just more skilled, but a better version of who you are, more thoughtful, more caring, wiser, where you have more understanding of the world around you, and there's wisdom and you have presence and connection, and you're growing as who you are. And you can see the fruit of that when good work grows us, and then we go out into other areas of life and we're able to mentor others. We're able to solve more problems. We're able to be a better parent, a better friend. We're able to volunteer, be on boards because we've grown in the wisdom, that sense of just who we are is growing as a person, and we're becoming more true and good and beautiful, for lack of a better way to say it. How true is that for you? Becoming a better person, works climbing higher. All right, now look at those 5 and total them up. I'll pause for a quick math moment. And just total up the total of all of those 5 scores. Now, if you've totaled 0 to 10, I would say that you've got a real problem on your hands that needs to be a top priority for you. If you are feeling so little meaning, like these questions are both about the objective meaning and your sense of it, your fulfillment with it. And if it's that low in work, that's a problem. Now, it may need to be solved by finding a new job. It may need to be solved by finding a new career path. It may need to be solved by thinking differently and taking a reset and going, what am I expecting out of work? What's happening? And how do I actually think differently? If I'm burnt out and I'm frustrated, like, do I need to just get a little space and think about the meaning that is in my job and how I could approach it differently? Step back, get some career guidance, some mentoring, and say, should I be thinking about this? So you can re-engage in a way that's much more meaningful and connected to meaning. But if it really stays low and it's really true, well, then big priority in life is finding that new job or that new calling. Is it connected to the type of work that you do or to the place that you do it? And starting to look at that and saying, is this place that where I am? Some organizations, unfortunately, are so skewed towards a view of success that's really counter meaning. It's very difficult to pursue meaning in those environments. If you're 11 to 20, I would encourage you to, so if you've scored 11 to 20 out of these 5 questions, I'd encourage you to think about ways that you can optimize, hone in on those low scores and say, what are plans that I can establish? What is this about this? Should I be just thinking a little differently about work? Should I be focused on a few different things? Should I be are there learning opportunities that I'm not taking? Have I not gone for some promotions that I really should do that are going to stretch me? Or is this just like, I'm a little stuck and I actually need to think about this? And this is a great invitation to step back and think about your career. Think about the next steps that you want to take through your career in this. And then finally, if you're in 21 to 25, and you have strong connection of meaning to work, then I would say, keep going. Make sure that you're healthy. Make sure, in fact, in that you do, I would challenge you in 2 ways. One is, keep going, grow that impact over and over, continue to grow that impact. And secondly, is make sure that you don't get addicted to that and that work becomes too much and too important. We want to be healthy in all of life. Work should be established in the right picture of all of our priorities in life. And if it's the only place that we find meaning, then that's actually becomes a problem because we'll end up working more hours than we should, or we'll sacrifice other things that are really valuable in life. And so continue, keep going, optimize it, and make sure it's in its right place. All right, that is my challenge, my invitation, my message is to think deeply about connecting work to the highest pursuit of meaning in our lives, not just to pay so we can go and do other things with our time, not just as a necessary evil or thing to get past, but actually as an adventure, a call, a journey that's connected to the very meaning of life and the pursuit of meaning itself. That is my invitation to you. Now, if you have any questions, I would love to discuss those, and please put those in now. And I'll say that, thinking through this concept really quickly leads to thinking through what's the purpose then of leadership and being a manager, and how should we lead from this perspective? It leads to thinking through business and how are we defining success in the business world? I mean, this whole view of success is just this one piece. And if we have a financial profit and loss that's successful, the business is successful. That is just not that's so one-dimensional. And I think we're all seeing in our culture a breakdown where certain people are getting way richer at the expense of a lot of others, and at the expense of the environment, at the expense of working conditions. And it's not right. And I think this is something that helps us to rethink what business success is. And it's an invitation to say, well, if I'm thinking about meaning in work, how am I thinking about meaning in life? And what's the fullness of how do I set goals, have a vision, and careers? And those are all things that we'll have webinars on upcoming and articles on as well, because I think that they're all connected. And the invitation again is to think deeply about what's truly meaningful and the things that are worthy of our pursuit in life, and then pursue that. Well, thank you for the time today. I'll go to questions. And so one question is, what advice would you give to someone who feels really stuck in an entry-level job? Well, I think that when we are stuck at any point in our career, whether it's entry level or it's much more advanced, much further along in our career, is to recognize that that feeling of stuckness is really good feedback. That if we feel stuck, it means that we're feeling not content. We're feeling like we want more, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing to want more out of our work. We want the fullest, richest vision of work, the fullest, richest work life that we can have. And so embrace the feeling of being stuck. And actually, the first thing I would recommend is to spend a little time meditating on how miserable you are. Actually spend a little bit of time thinking about how unhappy being stuck makes you, because ultimately you have to find motivation to do things that you've not done before to achieve a full vision of work in your life. You may have to go to school. You may have to study outside. You may have to ask for really hard advice of, why am I not seeing more success in my work? What do I need? You may have to find mentors and books and podcasts, all of which are out there, in order to get wisdom on charting a career. You have work to do when you're stuck. So spend a little time thinking about how miserable you are and get really anchored to that. And then spend some time thinking about how fulfilled you'd be with a better career and with something more full. And then actually start to lay out the groundwork of what do you need to learn and do it. If you go, oh, I don't even know, well, then just look for a good podcast. There's wonderful podcasts on how to grow your career. Buy one book on this. Come to one more webinar like this. Start to do things. Start to have a few conversations. Ask a few questions of those around you. All right, next question. How important is it, in your opinion, to model meaning and work for others? It's a great question. I think it's absolutely vital because most of us learn what's normal based on everyone around us. And so we don't typically do we get a class on the purpose of work and what true success is? Or do we just sort of absorb it and it becomes what's normal and what everyone around us models? And so if you're pursuing something full and meaningful and you're pursuing meaning in work, modeling that, speaking about that, talking about that, encouraging others to that is really important because we are all more shaped by what's normal around us than by any talk like this. We can only get the needle to move so far through reading a book or hearing a talk. It's actually being around people. It's actually then modeling for others how we can really make that change. Next question is the true purpose of work changing? And how has the pandemic reshaped society's view of work? And how should my company respond to these changes? It's a great question. I don't think the true purpose of work is changing in that I think that work has always been a thing that can bring great goodness and is this thing that we do as human beings in pursuit of something that matters and gives our life something that has some weight that matters. Like work has always really mattered, but I think that we are in an interesting time in the culture where everyone is waking up to the reality that the way that we've done business and the way that we formed jobs before is not good enough. People are dropping out of the workforce at record rates into the gig economy or retiring. They're seeking different jobs because they're aware that there's more to life than this. I don't want to just go back to this grind that I had before. I don't want to continue to experience the suffering that I have through the pandemic connected to my jobs. And then I think culturally, there's this awareness of the cracks in capitalism, that this whole message that we've all learned of just pursue selfishness in your career and your business. Just pursue unbridled pursuit of your own self-interest. And then you'll become so successful and that will trickle down and help everybody else. It's not actually how it's working. Like that hasn't really worked. It works in some areas, but in a lot of areas, it doesn't work at all because selfishness is not good. Actually, what we need to do is pursue meaning that there's sacrifice involved in. And yes, we can be financially successful on the way and live a life of flourishing. Flourishing is always a good goal, but selfishness is never the right goal. And so I think that we're all questing, searching for some deeper story of work and what is this? I mean, there is a meaning crisis in our culture of people who are just zoning out with video games and Netflix and feel like life is pointless and the government is ineffective and the church is corrupt. And what are we all doing? And there's just this sense of this global malaise of lack of meaning. And it's like, no, we have to come back to there's deeply meaningful things in life, things worthy of sacrifice, and work can be connected to that. And I would challenge any company to respond to this by saying, what are we actually doing as a mission? What's the impact of our company? How do we define success? And how do we have a success that's connected directly to flourishing for others? It's connected directly towards meaning. And then how do we draw that down into every single job? So every single job is connected to that broader story of meaning. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute delight getting to share and discuss these things. And I really appreciate you thoughtfully engaging with me on this and spending the time. And connect with me on LinkedIn if you have more questions and discussions, and we'll have this available for this recording available as well. And I appreciate the chance to be together today. Thank you.